We have another seasoned HR now who will be lending her voice to the topic in the person of Miss Ebunoluwa Opelami. She is a strategy and human resource consultant and the former head of people, culture, and transformation at Workforce Group. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ma. Over to you.
So thank you for having me. We are talking about something that is really important, and I'm not going to downplay the importance across the other areas that has been spoken about, but I'm just going to talk on what is the impact of this multi-generational workforce in the workplace, which is where I sit. Okay, and like the last speaker spoke, Benga spoke about it, saying that this is the first time we are having this number of generations in the same workplace. And this is actually backed up by, there's data to back this up. So according to Pew Research Center, this is the first time we are having about 5 generations within the same workspace. That means you can have a grandmother with her grandchild working in the same organization. So I'm talking globally now. This is a major thing that we need to tackle. Okay, and the reason behind this is that more individuals, like I said, talking globally now, more individuals are choosing to work well past their typical retirement age. And of course, you can't stop those who are finishing school from coming into the workplace. So you have diverse people within the same space. And of course, this comes with its pros and cons. I'll start with the pros rather, and then talk about the cons, some of which Benga has spoken about already, so I wouldn't really dwell on them. And then we look at what can we do to foster better relationships, because we actually need the two parties. I mean, more than two now. All the 5 people bring their own value to the table. So what are the pros? What are the advantages? I always like to look at things from the positive. What are the advantages? So many people have already spoken about, the young generations. Okay, maybe before I go into that, just to reiterate, I know a lot of people have talked about the generations that we have within the various segments of life, but talking about the workspace now, we have the silent generation, people born within 1928 to 1945, baby boomers, 1946 to 64, Generation X, 1965 to 1980, Generation Y, 81 to 96, and Generation Z, which is the Gen Z that a lot of people talk about, 97 to 2012. So you can imagine, like I mentioned earlier, a grandma with her grandchild working in the same place. Grandma who maybe when she was born, what was being used to communicate there maybe were telegram, typewriters, post office, and all of that. While the Gen Z, they were born into technology. They were born into the fast-paced environments. So that's what they've always known. And they are more adaptable to such things. Whereas the other generations or the older generations may have a bit of phobia as to how the technology works and all of that. So those are the kind of things we will be looking at this afternoon. Rather than focusing on the negatives, how can we harness the various opportunities that comes with these various generations within the workspace? So like I was saying earlier, the younger generations are already accustomed to the rapidly developing technology and the adapting, they easily adapt to changes that it drives. Of course, in like manner, more matured people or employees have the knowledge from their years of experience in terms of how things work. They're able to guide decision making. They're able to bring to fore their experience, their wisdom, and all of that. And all of this are useful. What I want us to really focus on is the collaboration of fresh innovation with wisdom from the experience. This brings productivity into the workspace. Otherwise, if we keep focusing on the negative, they are too slow, they want this, they have the entitlement mentality and all of that, we'll keep looking at the negative and create a toxic work environment, which is not the aim of the business or the organization at the end of the day. Is to drive productivity, collaboration. So what can we do to ensure that that is what we get at the end of the day? And because of this varying generations within the workspace, we have a lot of things to our advantage. So take, for instance, we have what we call the reverse or cross-generational mentoring, meaning that I can learn from you, you can learn from me. Grandma can learn from her grandchild. The grandchild has a lot to learn from grandma as well. So there's nobody left out, really. We all have something to bring to the table. But if you don't try and understand this, we'd always see things from our own point of view. A lot of us have seen this when 9 is written in a certain way. Somebody standing at the opposite end might be seeing 6, while standing on the right, I might be seeing 9, but it's still the same figure. So we need to be able to look through each other's eyes or each other's frame of reference to understand where we are coming from when we interact with one another. When we have all of these people within the way, and I know a lot of speakers have already spoken to this as well, in terms of the wisdom the older generation bring to the table. And part of the videos you did as well, when you engage people on the streets in Lagos, somebody mentioned, and I was really, delighted to say, okay, somebody else saw this as well. The younger generations are very, I don't want to use the word impatient, but they are very eager to see things happen so rapidly, which is what they were born in and is expected. But the older generation are able to see through things. They have that patience, they have the resilience. They are able to say, okay, this thing from experience, it takes time. So let's give him the time. But of course, the younger generation also, they have their own ideas to say, rather than collaboration happens, of course, we have more to gain than lose. And of course, the multiple perspectives cannot be overemphasized. So what are the cons? These are the things that is happening in the work. And I'll try and make it very practical at this point. The first is communication issues. The younger generations, we do a lot of chatting. I use my mobile phones to chat with my friends. So I'm used to using abbreviations, LOL, ROTFL. And they found themselves in the workplace. And they start communicating with these same abbreviations. And everyone is wondering, okay, what does this really mean? And at times, communication styles and what people expect can also even be a source of conflict. Some may be seen as being rude, but they don't mean to be rude, but it's what they are used to. So those are the kind of things that sort of creates gaps or sources of conflict within the work environment. Sometimes a younger person talks and is interpreted, maybe the tone is interpreted as rude. But if that person was to be amongst his or her own peers, they understand the slang, is welcoming. So all of this we are still going to talk about what we can do to overcome these challenges, right? Then the negative stereotypes. It's often said that once we don't understand something, we don't really like what we don't understand. A lot of people, or virtually everybody, wants to understand what they have in front of them. So once you don't understand something, you're bound not to really like the thing. And I always like to explain this with the place of marriage as well. The woman is different from the man. The man is different from the woman. When they don't understand each other, there is bound to be conflict. And you see the woman as, oh, she's very sensitive. What's wrong with her? The man, oh, he's so mean. But we are wired differently. So is it with the different generations as well. We need to understand ourselves. But currently, people just have that bias. They have that stereotype to say, oh, the younger generations, they are perceived as they have entitlement mentality. And then the older ones too, they are not flexible. They are afraid of embracing technological changes and all of that. Try to understand what is really in these people. And by in these people, I mean both the younger and the older generation coming together to understand where each one's frame of reference is. We will keep having all of this. Okay, and then varying expectations. The younger people have their work style. They have a way they want to work. They rather work at a particular time, or maybe work from home, and even up to compensations. The way the older generation want to be compensated is different from where the younger ones want to be compensated. So when you have all of this within the workspace, how do we come together to make a headway? And of course, learning, ability to learn also, and learning styles. That's another thing. We all learn differently. So these are the things we always have to deal with within the workspace. So the question is, what is the solution to all of this? How do we foster a collaborative work environment and multi-generational workforce? And I'll say this, the bedrock of every other point I'm going to talk about this for the remaining few minutes is that the bedrock is communication. Communication. Okay, be it each party understanding the other. Why is this person this way? Why are they thinking this way? If I can take that time to understand the Gen Z, rather than just having the stereotype that, oh, that's who they are, that's how they do. I have more to gain. So communication is so, so important. We must take time to understand these people. Otherwise, the organizations are going to be losing a lot of value. And of course, we will not leave the older generation out of the equation as well, because they also have a lot of value to bring in place. So understanding what each party needs, understanding their frame of reference, understanding their perspectives, their ideas is very important. Secondly is getting feedback. Every organization must consistently get feedback from their employees. That is so critical. That is one major way of understanding what people, it's usually said that when you assume something, you will make an ass of you and I. And assumption is the lowest level of knowledge. We don't make assumptions when it comes to people and organizations, because people actually drive organizations' objectives. So we must get feedback from people, and it's not enough to get feedback. We may not be able to address all the feedback or all the needs of the 2 or the 5 parties involved, but at least we can do, if we can't do 10, we can do 2, we can do 3. And people see that, okay, they feel heard. Get feedback, we work on this feedback and ensure that everybody feels heard and an inclusive environment. The third is accommodating different work styles. I think this is a major, major one. I think Benga mentioned also earlier, and another speaker had mentioned, that the Gen Z or the younger generation believe that, oh, they'd rather work from home, or maybe they work X number of times within the week, or do this or do that. What I always subscribe to is, so far the objectives of the organization is being met. The how may not necessarily be key. However, because it is an organization where different people are, so we need to now come to say, okay, you feel you should work this way. If you work this way, are you delivering value? Yes. So why can't you work that way? So we can see that, okay, this is a way to work. Another person feels, let's work this way. At the end of the day, we can look at things that work, because organizations are there to achieve their objectives. But it's also important to know that people who are achieving these objectives are happy doing it. You don't want to have people's heads in the office. You want their mind. You want their whole being in the office. So we need to hear them, accommodate the different work styles once the organization's objectives are being met. And of course, it's important that we take the bull by the horn. And by that, I mean combating the biases and stereotypes. Let people know, again and again, communicate to the older generation that these people have a lot to offer. They're not always just wearing their headphones and listening to music. Maybe that's a way they work better. It doesn't mean that they don't have value. It doesn't mean that they don't bring something to the table. So we need to always combat those biases, talk about it, explain it, help them understand one another. Another thing is nurturing an inclusive environment. So on the management team, for instance, there's nothing stopping you from having a Gen Z there. So far, they have something to offer. They have the qualification, they have the ideas, they've proven themselves over and over again. I can't say, oh, because this person is this age and they have all the qualifications, we restrict them. Okay, I'll speak a bit on that, because I know that was actually raised in terms of when recruiting and some ages are mentioned and all of that. The last point on this, in terms of how do we foster a collaborative work environment, is clarifying and reiterating expectations. What are your expectations? So right from the recruitment stage, you're bringing somebody into a new environment. What are their expectations? Okay, if it's actually aligns with your own organization's expectations, yes, there will be a marriage. But if it doesn't, right there and then, you already know there will be a gap. But then if these people have things that motivate them, what motivates you as an individual, it's not enough for HR to just roll out some very bright ideas or activities. No, you must have an aim at the back of your mind based on facts, based on data that you've collected over time. So basically, I'll just wrap up the session in summary. How do we tackle this issue of multi-generational workforce? And how do we foster a collaborative work environment at the end of the day? And in summary, I'll say first, discovering how to manage multi-generational workforce certainly has its challenges, but it's also rewarding for the organization to understand those challenges and deliberately tackle them. Leveraging age-related differences provides sound talent pipeline to support the business sustainability. And two, the key is to communicate openly, honestly, and transparently to build an atmosphere where people feel included and respected. This provides a positive employee experience and enables people to fulfill their professional needs and potential. Thank you very much for this time.